The knocking lands before any greeting. 3 hits. Close. Heavy. Police. Open the door. Now. Between the knocks, only the hallway light hums. No other sound crosses the door. A voice answers from inside, steady, loud enough to carry through the wood. What is this about? Noise complaint. Step outside. The phone screen wakes in Laura Bennett's hand. 2:30 p.m. Saturday. The lock screen glare reflects faintly in the peephole. Another knock follows, closer to the hinge this time. The vibration runs through the frame instead of the panel. A warning is delivered once, without added detail. From inside, Laura states that she has been asleep, that she lives alone. She asks what noise was reported. No description is offered in return. The same instruction is delivered again. Through the peephole, boots fill the circle, squared to the threshold. One hand remains near the belt. The other brushes the radio and drops back to the side. The position holds across several seconds. Laura's thumb moves across the glass. The doorbell app opens. A red dot appears at the top edge of the screen and stays there. The lens frames the uniform cleanly. The badge sits centered. The number can be read without zooming. She asks for a name and a badge number. The answer is brief. Identification is refused. The knock returns. Not faster. Heavier. The same order follows. The officer leans forward. The camera captures his face tightening into the frame. One eye aligns with the lens. The other falls outside it. He speaks again, slower now. Each word is separated by a pause longer than the last. The reason does not change. Inside, a second recording begins on Laura's phone. Between voices, the audio line remains flat. A message is typed and sent to Mark Ellis, 2 doors down. The reply arrives quickly and contains only a confirmation that nothing can be heard from her unit. The hallway sound resumes. 3 strikes, a beat between each. The rhythm stays consistent. A consequence is stated. Arrest is mentioned. The words arrive without elaboration. From inside, Laura repeats her question. Who called? What was reported? No response follows. The same order returns. A brief sound passes through the door. Air pushed out through the nose. 1 beat, then nothing. The officer's gaze drops to the nameplate fixed to the door. He reads Bennett once. He does not say it. The red dot remains visible on the screen. A countdown begins. 1 number is spoken. Nothing else shifts. Another number follows. The radio produces a short burst of static. No words form. The next number is spoken. Laura taps the screen again. A call connects. There is a short electronic click before the line opens. The speaker activates. The doorbell feed remains steady. Before the next number arrives, Laura states that she is on the line with dispatch. The words are aimed at the door, so they carry. The count stops. For several seconds, only the hallway light hum is audible. The boots adjust half a step. The hand near the belt lowers, then returns to the same place. The officer speaks again, quieter. The volume drops. The content does not. Laura keeps the phone lifted. The recording continues. A voice comes through the speaker. Calm. Measured. Another electronic click marks a pause. Laura repeats the information out loud, exactly as it is given. There is no call on record for her address. No objection follows. No correction is offered. The officer straightens. The radio lifts toward his shoulder. A few words go into it, too low to register on the audio line. He turns back toward the lens. The red dot stays fixed at the top of the screen. Laura waits. Another instruction arrives through the speaker. Short, unqualified. Laura does not add to it. She relays it through the door without alteration. The officer remains still for a moment. Then his eye breaks contact with the lens. The boots pivot away from the threshold. Footsteps move down the hall, faster than they arrived. The camera holds the angle. At the far end, the officer Daniel Reed looks back once. The badge catches the overhead light. Then he turns the corner. Laura does not touch the lock. Her hand stays on the phone. The call remains connected. The red dot does not disappear. No new knock follows. The line stays open. The waiting continues. The waiting stretches. Laura stays by the door. Her phone remains lifted, angled so the lens can see past her shoulder. The red dot stays visible at the top edge. Footsteps return in the hallway. Different spacing now. Slower. A second presence stops short of the threshold. Fabric brushes the wall. A radio clicks press. Release then clicks again, longer this time. Daniel Reed shifts half a step to his right. His shoulder slides into the camera's line, shaving off part of the frame. The lens still catches his badge, but the lower half of the door disappears. He adjusts once more, precisely, then holds. Laura tilts the phone slightly, reclaiming a narrow slice of the hallway. The radio sounds again, a sustained transmission. Reed turns his head away from the door as he speaks into it. The camera catches the side of his jaw moving. The audio app records only the carrier tone beneath the transmission. A sleeve enters the edge of the framed dark fabric. Department patch, then the second officer steps fully into view. He positions himself farther down the hall, angled toward the stairwell. He looks once toward the elevator sign, then back to Reed. His radio stays lowered. Reed faces the door without leaning in. "Can you step outside for a moment?" Laura waits a beat, listening to the phone speaker. Then she answers once. "No." The radio clicks short bursts now, back to back. Reed listens. His boots angle outward. He raises one hand and gestures down toward the floor, just beyond the threshold, palm open. Fingers loose. Laura keeps her hand on the phone. "I'm staying inside." The second officer lifts his radio and speaks, eyes still on the stairwell. The transmission runs longer than the last. Reed nods once without looking away from the door. On Laura's phone, the dispatcher asks her to confirm her address. Laura answers. One sentence. Exact. Reed steps closer again, reducing the space by a few inches, then stops. The gesture toward the floor does not repeat. "Just come talk to us out here." Laura does not reply immediately. She listens to the phone, then responds, "I'm on the line with dispatch." A soft tone sounds through the speaker call transfer. A new voice joins the line, identified by role rather than name. The questions narrow to specifics. Laura answers in short confirmations. The second officer shifts his weight and takes 2 steps toward the stairwell, placing himself just beyond the camera's view. His radio comes up, a longer transmission follows. Reed turns his head to listen, then straightens. Reed takes a step back, opening the frame. The camera regains a clear view of the hallway. A third sound enters the space. The dull thud of a stairwell door closing on a lower floor. The hallway light hum continues. From the phone speaker, Laura is told to remain inside and keep the door closed. She repeats the instruction aloud, unchanged. Reed looks at the doorbell camera, then away. He lifts his radio, presses, and releases. Another transmission comes through, short, final. He listens without moving. Units are on the way. The sentence is said toward the radio, not toward the door. Reed hesitates. 1 beat. He glances once more at the camera, then at the empty stretch of hallway to his left. The second officer's footsteps recede toward the stairwell. Reed steps back to the hallway's center line. He presses his radio again, answers briefly, then turns from the door. His footsteps move down the hall at a measured pace. The camera holds the space he leaves behind. Laura does not touch the lock. She lowers the phone an inch, then raises it again, keeping the lens steady. The call remains connected. The red dot stays visible. The hallway frame stays clear. The waiting continues. The waiting does not end when the hallway clears. Laura stays where she is for several seconds after the camera frame empties. Her phone remains lifted. The red dot stays visible. The call does not disconnect. A new sound replaces the footsteps. Elevator doors open somewhere down the hall. Close again. The building resumes its normal rhythm in pieces. From the phone speaker, the dispatcher tells Laura to remain inside until units arrive. Laura answers once. Minutes pass without conversation. When the knock returns, it is different. 1 strike, lighter, centered on the panel instead of the frame. Laura checks the peephole. 2 uniforms stand back from the door. Both faces are visible. Both name strips are unobstructed. One officer holds a notepad flat against his palm. The other keeps his hands clear of his belt. Laura Bennett. Yes. Sergeant Paul Harris. Follow-up. Laura keeps the chain on. She does not open the door yet. Hold it to the peephole. The sergeant lifts his badge and holds it steady until the camera captures the number cleanly. Laura unlocks the chain and opens the door. She steps back inside the threshold and stops. The door stays open. The officers do not cross it. They ask Laura to explain what happened from the beginning. She answers in sequence, without commentary. The knocking, the claim, the refusal to identify, the countdown, the call. She does not raise her voice. She does not speculate. When she finishes, she turns her phone around. The doorbell video plays. The audio runs underneath it. The sergeant watches without interrupting. The second officer writes. At one point, he pauses and copies the badge number directly from the screen. When the video ends, the sergeant asks whether the officer gave a reason for being there. No. They ask if anyone else can confirm the apartment was quiet. Laura steps into the hall and knocks on the door, 2 doors down. Mark Ellis opens his door. He confirms he was home the entire afternoon. He confirms he heard nothing until the knocking started. The sergeant records the statement and the time. Send the original file, unedited. Preserve the metadata. The sergeant spells out the department email address and specifies the format. Laura repeats the address back before sending anything. The upload completes. A receipt confirmation appears in her inbox with a case number in the subject line. The red dot disappears. The officers leave. The next contact comes the following morning. A voicemail requests a return call to professional standards and references the same case number. Laura returns the call within the hour. The investigator asks for the same details again. Laura gives them again, in the same order. She is asked whether she recognizes the officer from prior contact. She says she does not. She is asked whether she has reason to believe the officer knew who she was. She says she cannot speak to that. She is instructed to preserve all original recordings and metadata. Laura confirms they are backed up. The investigator states that the officer, Daniel Reed, was not assigned to the building and had no call for service logged at that time. Laura listens. Over the next weeks, the record expands. A written statement is requested through a secure portal. Laura logs in, uploads the document, and receives a confirmation screen tied to the same case number. An interview is scheduled. The time changes once. Laura attends when it is rescheduled. She is informed that 2 similar complaints exist. Both involve late-day visits. Both involve claims that could not be verified by dispatch. No details are provided beyond that. Later, she is notified that the internal review has been referred for criminal investigation. Months pass. A subpoena arrives by certified mail. Laura signs for it. In court, the video plays again. Larger screen, slower playback, paused at the countdown. The badge number is visible. The verdict comes back guilty on multiple counts. The sentence follows. Laura does not speak afterward. She returns home. The camera remains mounted beside her door. The civil case moves on a separate track. The complaint lists dates, times, procedures, and failures. The video file is cited as an exhibit by case number. Depositions are scheduled. Policies are entered into evidence. The case resolves before trial. $1.2 million. The amount is read into the record. Laura listens. She does not react. Afterward, changes arrive in writing. Database access policies are revised. Off-duty contact rules are updated. Door camera footage is formally listed as admissible evidence in misconduct reviews. Laura reads the notices when they arrive. She does not remove the camera. The doorbell rings one evening again. This time it is a package delivery. The camera records automatically. Laura reviews the clip. The file saves. The indicator clears. The record remains. This is Power Abuse Stories. We follow what happens after the door stays closed when a record leaves the hallway and enters a file. If you want more cases where documentation outlasts authority, subscribe and stay with the record.